Welcome back. This is the latest episode of Alabama Gristmill. We got Thanksgiving coming up. We wanted to kind of touch base with everybody and get this one out. And because we had some kind of things we remember about Thanksgiving. Well, first I want to welcome Donna Causey, my co-host.
Hi.
With the holiday coming up, it kind of reminded me back some stories we've got about Birmingham. And, because I remember growing up a few years back, they used to have Christmas windows decorations that they put up around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they were. You remember going to those when you were very tiny when.
Yep, I do remember.
Yeah, I remember them when I was a kid too. It was Pizzitts and Loveman's were the ones that were in competition for their displays, and they had gone. But that was one thing that we loved to do after Thanksgiving. When the shopping and all took place in downtown Birmingham.
Yeah, well, the nice part is they actually waited till after Thanksgiving to put the Christmas up, right, if I remember correctly. And then because nowadays you go into any of these stores and, I think I saw Christmas holiday decorations up in October.
I know it. It's way too early. I think you can't really enjoy the Thanksgiving holidays.
There were some up before Halloween, I think, that I saw this year.
I did too. It's just
personal beef of mine, but I mean, we're kind of rough. I don't let any Christmas music play in the house until after Thanksgiving, just to kind of keep some kind of specialness to the holiday. Kids hate it though, but they love giving me a hard time as well.
But it should be. We should honor our traditions.
Yeah, because I remember when we went downtown and saw those, they were pretty animated. I mean,
they were fancy.
Yeah, I remembered it was just it just wowed me. I don't know if an adult it looked as amazing, but the kids were. As a kid, I was fascinated by it. So
yeah,
I mean, because it was like 2 or 3, 4 windows per store.
Very animated, more. Beautiful, and they usually competed too. It was fun shopping too in those big tile department stores. Everything was decorated throughout it and really got you in the Christmas spirit.
Yeah, it's like kind of nowadays you got Amazon, which is great and all, but you definitely miss a little bit of the amazement, wow factor, and even the mall Santa is not as a popular tradition as it used to be, just because not many people go to the mall anymore. I have time to go to the mall, which is a shame.
Right, those big buildings downtown were fun to shop in. But did you know there's a story about the city of Birmingham and the big tall buildings falling into an underground river?
No, I've never heard of an underground river. Much less a river in Birmingham, but not much less an underground one. I mean, I know you got Red Mountain and all that, but I don't know anything about an underground river.
Well, it's kind of an interesting one. It's a fun one. I was looking through some newspaper articles way back, and when the city of Birmingham started around 1871, and I just happened to run across this, and the more I read, the more interested it got. Birmingham, is located in the north central part of Alabama. It's the largest city, really, and it got a late start. It didn't really start until 1871.
Were a lot of other cities founded? I guess Montgomery was probably a city before Birmingham.
Yeah, they were in the early 1800s. Birmingham was kind of late. It actually got started by a railroad crossing trip, and people bought up the property and started really investing in it, and that's how it got the name the Magic City, because it just grew overnight almost. It was a real exciting time for them.
So it's more of a business, a speculative kind of founding, as opposed to a early trade by a river and all that. So
right, and people were excited. They thought it was going to be the Philadelphia of the South. This was because of the steel industry and all. But so it kind of shocked them when an article came out in a paper in the Louisville Courier one day in Kentucky about Birmingham. I'll give you a quote that really attracted my attention. All of a sudden it said that the city of Birmingham has an immense underground river that flows under it, and the entire town was in danger of falling in and being swept away. While excavating for the foundation of a large building, the stone crust was pierced and it was breaking away, and buildings were falling in. The corner of the city hall was going in. So you can imagine what people in Birmingham felt that day when they read their morning paper and none of that was taking place.
So the Louisville wrote that in their paper, in the morning paper,
Right.
and then, but nothing was happening in Birmingham, right?
Nothing like that was going
okay.
on. Here they wake up to their morning coffee and that is carried down to them, So they kind of, everybody, the telegraph office in Birmingham just got flooded with from all over the country with what's going on, because this is a big city that was growing quick.
It's kind of a War of the Worlds kind of scenario.
Right. I can't imagine what they thought. Anyway, they tracked it down. The people from Birmingham kind of tracked it down, found that it was written by Professor Mulhat. They said, wait a minute, this isn't going on. You need to come and visit us, come tell us where you got this story. And they finally got him to come back down. It turned out.
Well, let's go back. And who was Professor
Well, that's what I'm going to get into down the
Okay.
line. I'll explain that a little bit later on because it's part of the story, really.
Okay. I'm jumping ahead.
Let's go a step at a time. They finally got him to come down, and that's when they really got into the story. And
so Joe Mulhattan was out of Louisville.
Out of Louisville.
He was a visitor to the city.
He was supposed to be a professor who kind of gave stories about things that were happening scientifically around the world. He was kind of a geologist or something of sorts, is what he professed to be. And he said that he had visited Birmingham, and that's what was taking place. And, I don't know why he decided to write a story, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Well, I mean, he's saying it's taking place, but not quite as dramatic as he wrote it. So
right. It was, there was a little bit to it because when they were building some of the buildings, they ran into some water down below, So some of them really leading citizens began to worry about it a bit. Anyway, they finally convinced him to come down, and they said, now you need to take us to where you found out about this underground river. We can see for ourselves. What are you talking about? Because he kept saying, it's true, but not the City Hall falling or anything. But he said, there is an underground river. So he took them out to around Avondale, I think is where it was, found a stream, and it was going into a tunnel, and they traveled into the tunnel for about 15 miles before they couldn't go any further. So there was an underground stream in a cave, but they had to stop at that point. But then it kind of gets weird, the story does at this point. So,
where was this stream they went in Avondale? What area
they
was
think
that?
We believe it was the Black Warriors, what he was talking about, as part of because it will go underground. Rivers do go under caves at different points. So from what we understand, that's what he was thinking about. And that's where they got on, started.
How big was this tunnel, this entrance?
It was, it was really wide. I think it was about 300 feet wide or something.
Kind of big
was
enough for a steamship?
Yeah, that's what he said. That's what everybody was saying. It was big enough for a steamship to go down into it. And supposedly, this is all the way it was written up in the newspaper. But the leading citizens were on the boat that went in, so they kind of got to saying, hey, this is true. But after they went in, another article came out the next day, and it kind of got a little weird with what Professor Mulhattan said he had seen.
So what do you mean? What do you mean by weird?
Well, he started saying that the river was greater in volume than the Mississippi. If you can believe it or not. Can you imagine the Mississippi River going under
one of the largest rivers in the world? Yeah, that's pretty dramatic.
Right. And then he said it was formed by huge icebergs that went down and opened a ship canal to the Gulf of Mexico. And so we could travel that way and go underwater and go all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And he said he found fossils, and he believed his prehistoric race found metals and transported them to the sea. Then he even said they harnessed dinosaurs and they made them tame and took them. They drug the ship laden with pig iron and they pulled it to the sea with ease, So, it really got weird at that point. So I don't know what the people were thinking. I could just imagine the city people in Birmingham, did he have a couple of drinks or something? I don't know.
That was just or on something else at that time. Who knows?
Right. Well, they kind they knew something was kind of strange about it. He kept talking about seeing eyeless sea monsters, and they were kind of excited because if this was true, here they could build, mine the metals.
Because I got to go back and think in the time. I mean, we're talking in the 1800s, late 1800s.
Right.
And we're talking about people, they didn't know.
Right.
I mean, there were a lot of people that probably believed that.
Right.
And
they didn't. They kind of were wondering about him a bit, but if it was true, this might be a good way to invest in Birmingham. You could, mine all the minerals we have and then ship it underground to the Gulf. That would
it would be
phenomenal.
It's definitely a fascinating thing to have, a pipeline of the Gulf and I guess world trade at that point.
Right. That's what they were looking at. So I guess they catered to him for a little bit. But
he said he found stuff in there though, like bronze and statues and things like that. Is that what you were saying?
Well, the leading citizens didn't find it. That's what Professor Mulhattan claimed.
He said he
was claiming when he made the first trip. That's what he said he saw. He said,
gotcha.
And so they were talking about. Well, we need to get. They had to stop because there was some obstruction and they couldn't go any further down the. And so they had to stop and they started talking about. Well, we need to clear it so we can get to where you saw all this. So anyway, but meanwhile, the Iron Age Weekly Iron Age newspaper started investigating Mulhattan a little bit, and then they found some interesting information. They discovered that he was a well-known drummer.
What's a drummer?
I knew you'd ask that one.
Are you talking about a band or like a drummer?
No, basically, back during those times, people would go around and they were drummers, and basically they were liars, and they just like to tell tall tales to build up excitement. Sometimes they were salesmen. They didn't really do anything to be harmful, but it got them a lot of publicity, and I guess that's why they attracted people to them and their products that they were trying to sell or whatever.
Kind of like a snake oil salesman on a larger scale, for real estate.
In fact, he was one of the best ones. I guess he really was, because you can see how he got the people of Birmingham excited. And what he would say, when they confronted him about it, he said, well, people haven't time to read books. They're entertained by the newspapers, so I write short novels like Jules Verne, and people talk about it, and it's harmless and it doesn't hurt anybody. Of course, it could have hurt if people invested in all that, but anyway, he became really rich and well known all over the country, and newspapers would print his articles.
And I guess they probably didn't have a little note saying, "Oh, this is a piece of fiction."
Right. I guess it's kind of like the radio interview, the War of the World.
Yeah, like doing the War of the Worlds and entertain people on the radio.
Right. Yep. People didn't know whether it was true or not, and I guess that's what he basically did. And it must have been kind of common about that period because they looked for ways to get entertained. Sadly, he became an alcoholic, and his health deteriorated. He wound up being pensionless when he died, but it was kind of a big deal.
I figured he might have had drinks. I was saying that earlier. I think
he probably did. He probably toted in the local bar.
Came up with those ideas and everything. Imagine that boat ride, the original boat ride when he took the Birmingham, VIPs into that cave. I bet that was some interesting talking going on there, and him weaving a story like, oh, we can't go any further because, the dinosaurs knocked down this barrier, so we can't get in there. And this, we can't see it right now, but it's in there, I promise.
Right. And then there was a little bit of truth to it. A lot of stories that you find, there's always a little bit of truth here and there that they started on. That's what the drummers usually did. And
the best lies are based on a truth.
Yeah.
A bit of truth because it makes it believable.
Right. Well, in fact, the truth is that even today on heavy rains, people talk about, seeing water come up. Some of the old buildings down there, people were remodeling them. When I put the story on the website, people would write in and they said when they were remodeling them, they were construction people, and that they would get water in the basements. They found a lot of pumps in the basements, and some of the people would take it out, and of course, it caused problems when they did because it would flood on rainy days. There's even talk that there was a counterfeiting operation going on underground in Birmingham. It eventually surfaced in Tuscaloosa on the Black Warrior, so that's why it's connected with the Black Warrior River. So there's a little truth to it.
They're running counterfeit money underground,
right?
Or gold or whatever.
Right, go from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa and escape.
Interesting.
Anyway, there was some criminals.
Where was the entrance to this underground river?
It was at Avondale Park is where they were supposed to have gone in, but it got sealed up in the 1930s because there were you can imagine so many people were, after the word got out, they started investigating on their own. So it was unsafe and they just sealed it up. But the talk even goes back to the Native Americans even talked about a river going under the city of Birmingham or in Jefferson County, and they'd travel down it in a canoe on the Warrior River. So it's a story. It's been there. Like I say, there's a little bit of truth with it.
Now, with all that's going on and everything, is anything currently or in modern times, happen in regards to this river or anything? Have you heard anything about that?
Well, there's been some talk, that when they look into, start digging down kind of deep, they run into some water. People who kind of do a lot of remodeling of the old buildings in Birmingham also find pumps in the basement. And when they remove them, they find out the basements are flooded. So they run into troubles. And what happened, too, when I posted the article on the website, there were many people that wrote in that were construction people that had worked in Birmingham, and they reported the same thing. So there's probably something to it.
So there is. So you're making the call. There is a river that's under Birmingham. Now, is it
no, I'm making the call. There's streams. There's
is it
underwater.
The size of the Mississippi and flows and dinosaurs roaming with eyeless monsters and
It's an interesting story. It really is. But it kind of gives you an idea of what the drummers were like and what life was like back then. I guess that was a way of entertainment. You'd read in and you get it in the newspaper. So you kind of tend to believe it. But
anybody that has any info, share it in the comments and or send an email in or share it on our Facebook page and on Alabama Pioneers. You can find us there, facebook.com Alabama Pioneers or alabamapioneers.com, and we can find more details in this story. I think you got some pictures up as well on that with that story.
Yeah. Some of the buildings and everything. I know it's an interesting story. It really is. It was real interesting when I ran across it in the newspaper just out of the blue, not expecting to see it, especially when you start talking about dinosaurs under the city.
That's true. Well, I guess that's going to wrap up this episode. And a little note on the history of Birmingham and its underground river, ? If you like it, you like what you hear, and just subscribe to the podcast, share it with friends, and join us back. Should have one up shortly. Another little interesting history note about the Alabama. And we'll go ahead and end it with a little bit more Alabama Jubilee.
See you later.
Hey, let her go, oh honey.